Welcome to the Safety Map podcast. I'm Alyssa Decker, founder and developer of the Safety Map framework, and this is where we talk about how safety, not performance, is the foundation of healing. We're talking about healing that goes beyond coping skills and into structural change. I'm so glad you're here. What if dysregulation is not proof that something has gone wrong? What if it is simply evidence that your body has predicted threat and prepared to protect you? A body preparing to protect you is not a broken system. That is a functioning protective system. But because we so often believe that dysregulation is a problem, and that regulation is the goal, the thing we should always be working towards, and that the healthier we get, the more regulated we are. When we get dysregulated, we tend to jump right into a shame spiral. I'm too reactive. I'm too sensitive. I'm not healed enough. I'm overreacting. I know better. Why am I still doing this? I need to calm down faster. But what if the problem is not that your system is activated? What if the real question is whether or not the prediction it was responding to when it activated you is still accurate? That's what we're talking about on today's episode of the Safety Map podcast. Hey, Alyssa here. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Safety Map podcast. If you are enjoying this content, if you're learning something here, or even just identifying with what we've been talking about, please take a moment to subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're currently listening in on. This really helps other people find the content, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single upcoming episode. Thank you so much. Now back to today's episode. So let's start by asking the question, what is dysregulation and what purpose is it serving in my body? Despite what it might feel like, dysregulation is not random chaos. Dysregulation is not overreaction. And dysregulation is not you being too reactive or too emotional. Dysregulation is your body activating resources for your protection. Dysregulation is your body saying, put on your running shoes, go stand by the door, we may have to escape very soon. Dysregulation tends to happen, it tends to be activated by our system when our system perceives that something harmful may be about to happen. Dysregulation might look like fight or flight, freeze or fawn, those big reactions that we're all familiar with. But it may also look like shutdown, appeasing, explaining, withdrawing, controlling, performing a sense of calm even when inside you feel anything but. It can show up in shaky hands and sweaty palms and tightness in your stomach. It can look like your shoulders coming up around your ears because your body tenses so much. There are many ways that our bodies show signs of dysregulation, and none of them are right or wrong. Your body chooses the symptoms and the signs of dysregulation that it believes are the most likely to keep you safe. For example, if you are out hiking and you meet a wild animal, there is a very good chance that your body will send you into freeze mode, right? I have heard hikers tell stories of running into a mountain lion or a bear and freezing. Their minds are racing, telling them to run, but their body does not cooperate. Why? Because their nervous system predicted the highest probability of escaping from this situation safely was to freeze. I have talked to many people who carry a tremendous amount of guilt or shame or embarrassment about some of their behaviors, like over-explaining or over-apologizing or appeasing. And often what they don't realize is their system is using the sensations that come with dysregulation because it has predicted that is the most likely way to stay safe. Your system is not trying to answer the question, how do I stay regulated? Your system is trying to answer, what do I need to preserve safety? How do I stay connected? How do I preserve identity? How do I prevent as much harm as possible? So, dysregulation is not the problem. In fact, it may be the protection. Now, when your body runs these threat predictions, it is stunningly accurate. It is accurate in its prediction. In other words, it's running a predictive model that says something bad happened in the past, and when these things happen again, there is a greater probability that that bad thing comes next, that harmful thing is about to repeat itself. The trouble is that prediction sometimes becomes outdated. Maybe you're no longer in the relationship that caused harm. Maybe you're no longer in the workplace that was emotionally challenging. Maybe you're no longer around that abusive person. Maybe you now know how to navigate something safely that you didn't know how to navigate before. And your nervous system has not updated its information. In other words, your system is still predicting very accurately to an old environment, to an old data set. It hasn't released the old protective pattern yet because it still believes that protection is keeping you safe today. If a tone change when you were a child meant punishment was coming, that tone change now as an adult might result in activation, even though you are no longer a child subject to the punishment of that person. If at one point a delayed text in a relationship meant abandonment, now text delays continue to cause panic, even if they no longer mean abandonment. If feedback once meant humiliation, then feedback now may still be causing collapse or defense, even if you now have the skill set to appropriately handle feedback. So dysregulation may be a correct response, an accurate response to an outdated prediction. The question is not whether your body dysregulated correctly or incorrectly. The question is whether the prediction that it was responding to is still accurate. Now, before we talk about how we update those threat predictions, I want to also say that regulation is not the same thing as safety. Just because we are able to temporarily secure a sense of calm in our bodies does not mean that our body believes we are safe, nor does it mean that we actually are safe. Regulation tools can be very helpful. Your deep breathing exercises, your journaling, your movement, your grounding, all of those things can help calm us down in a moment when we need to calm ourselves enough to have a rational conversation, to make a logical decision, to accomplish whatever it is we need to accomplish. Regulation tools can give us enough capacity to be able to stay present. They can help you not act from the most activated part of you. But regulation tools cannot create safety, and they cannot change a threat prediction. In other words, if your body believes that a certain situation or a scenario is unsafe for some reason, you will have to reapply the pressure of those regulation tools every time your body predicts the threat. Sometimes we can override our system's alarm bells, our dysregulation, calm our bodies down using pressure, but that does not change the underlying threat prediction. And if your body did not continue to dysregulate you, to activate you every time it sees that threat approaching, it would be failing you. None of us want to live in bodies that cannot activate when a threat is present. But sometimes we confuse calm in our bodies or calm in someone else's body with a feeling of safety. Someone can look calm and still be bracing. Someone can speak softly while still appeasing. Someone can stop crying simply because they've shut down. They can become quiet because they've disassociated. They can comply because disagreement feels dangerous. Behavior that looks regulated does not always indicate a nervous system that feels safe. Now, here's the part that gets really interesting. We tend to use these regulation tools frequently and often because they help us feel better and because we hear messages all the time on social media and in books and in podcasts that staying calm and staying regulated is the ideal. It's the goal. But to your nervous system, using these techniques, these regulation strategies to kind of pressure your body into calmness while it is still detecting threat becomes another threat. When we make regulation the goal, dysregulation becomes something else to shame, something else to criticize ourselves for, some other way to feel like we have failed. We get activated, we try to override our bodies into calm, and now we're not just activated, we're also exhausted. Or if we try to regulate our bodies into calm and we aren't successful, now we're activated and embarrassed. Now we're activated and we're trying to perform calm. Now we're activated and pressuring ourselves to stop being activated. Self-pressure is still pressure, and pressure tightens systems. If I pressure myself to regulate, I am accidentally increasing the threat load. So now my system is not just responding to the threat that it predicted when it activated me in the first place. It is now responding to the internal threat of me telling myself to get my act together already. It's now carrying the embarrassment or the shame or the spiraling that I'm doing because my attempts to stay calm failed. This does not mean we never practice regulation. Sometimes it is appropriate, but it means that we need to stop using regulation as a weapon against the parts of us that are trying to protect us. When we are constantly trying to force calm or regulation on a body that is trying to protect us, we often inadvertently create an internal war, a battle between parts of ourselves that wasn't there before. Now, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to relationship advice, most models ask, how do we make regulation happen? How do we make curiosity happen? How do we make agency happen? How do we make repair happen? How do we get everyone feeling better? How do we reduce anxiety? But when I do safety mapping work with clients, we ask a deeper question. What is my system doing? What does it believe it's protecting? What threat is it responding to? And what strategy is it using to defend against that threat? And then the big question, what conditions would make that protective strategy unnecessary? In other words, how can I create enough safety in this particular situation or scenario that my body no longer needs this dysregulation and all of the things that come with it, all of the behaviors that come with it to protect me? What conditions would allow regulation to emerge naturally in my system? Safe bodies regulate themselves. Regulation is something like the state of homeostasis for your nervous system. Your system is not fighting to keep you dysregulated. It is working towards regulation, but it can only do that if the conditions are right. In other words, it can only do that if it perceives that there is no need for the defenses to be activated. And when your system regulates all on its own, because it perceives no meaningful threat, nothing is about to happen that requires your activation, that kind of regulation feels very different. It no longer requires excessive resources. It no longer requires high levels of anxiety. It no longer requires those overthinking spirals. It no longer requires the flash of red hot anger. Regulation that your body achieves naturally without your conscious effort or pressure is also maintained without your constant effort or pressure. So instead of asking ourselves, how do I calm down? How do I stay calm? Try asking some different questions. And here are a few to consider this week. What did my system predict in that moment when I got activated? What did my body prepare to protect? Is the threat current? Is this prediction still adaptive to my current situation and my current life? What would make this feel less threatening? What might allow regulation to emerge naturally? The question is not, how do I make my body stop doing this uncomfortable thing called dysregulation? The deeper question is, what is my body trying to protect? And what would help it need less protection? Dysregulation is not proof that you're broken. In fact, it is much more likely proof that your system is doing exactly what it learned it needed to do to keep you safe. The goal is not to begin a war with your own system in an attempt to maintain calm. The goal is to understand the prediction, to understand what your body believes is true and necessary, and the ways it is working to keep you safe. Because once you understand that, you can get on the same team with your body. You can begin to then work with your body at the level of those predictions. And that is when the regulation and the dysregulation conversation completely changes. Now, I want you to know that I've recorded a secret podcast just for you. 3 episodes designed to be delivered to your inbox over 3 days that will help you begin this exact process. The process of identifying the threat predictions that your body believes and the ways it is trying to protect you. To grab those secret podcast episodes, check the link in the show notes. Along with that, you'll receive a PDF guide where you can record your observations and your thoughts, and you'll receive access to a private community where you can ask questions, interact with me, and let me know what is happening in your body when you get dysregulated. What threat is your system predicting, and how might you begin to work with your body instead of fighting against it? Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Safety Map podcast. Before you go, I would love it if you would take a moment to like and subscribe to help other people find this episode as well. I'll see you soon on the next episode of the Safety Map podcast.